The bell rings in darkness. It is not loud. It does not need to be. The sound moves through stone corridors and wooden beams, through cells where men sleep on straw mattresses, through the cold air that settles in the chapel before dawn. The bell rings and the monks wake. This is how the day begins. Not with light, not with warmth. With a bell and the sound of footsteps on stone. You are in a monastery somewhere in Western Europe. The year does not matter much. It could be 950, it could be 1150. The rhythm is the same. The walls are thick, the windows are narrow. Outside, the world moves through wars and harvests and plagues. Inside, the day is divided into hours of prayer. The monks rise in silence. They do not speak. They pull on their woolen habits in the dark. The fabric is rough and heavy. It smells of smoke and sweat and the damp stone of the dormitory. They move through the corridors without candles. They know the way. In the chapel, a single lamp burns before the altar. The monks file into their stalls. They stand. They bow. They begin to chant. This is Matins, the first office of the day. It is still night. It will be night for hours. But the day has begun. Monastic life was built on repetition. The same prayers at the same hours, the same meals, the same work, the same silence. For men who entered the cloister, this was not a burden. It was the point. The world outside was unpredictable. Harvests failed. Lords fought. Sickness came without warning. Inside the monastery, time moved differently. It moved in circles. Each day was like the one before. This was not emptiness. It was structure. And structure, for many, was a kind of freedom. Monasteries were not retreats for the wealthy. They were not escapes. They were working communities. Monks farmed. They brewed beer. They copied manuscripts. They cared for the sick. They prayed, yes, but prayer was only part of the day. The rest was labor. The rest was silence. The rest was the slow, steady work of keeping the community alive. Most monks were not scholars. Most were not mystics. They were men who had chosen a life of routine. Some came as boys, given to the monastery by their families. Some came as adults after years of other work. Some came because they believed. Some came because they had nowhere else to go. What they shared was the vow, stability, obedience, conversion of life. These were the promises. You would stay. You would obey. You would change. And you would do it here, in this place, with these men, until you died. The monastery was not a place you visited. It was a place you became part of. The stone walls were not a prison. They were a boundary. Inside, you were held. Outside, the world continued. But you were no longer part of it. This is a story about that life. Not the dramatic moments, not the visions or the miracles. Just the days, the cold mornings, the long hours in the fields, the meals eaten in silence, the bells that divided the day into pieces, small enough to hold. If you find rest in slow history like this, you're always welcome to subscribe to Archive of Rest. We are going to spend a year inside these walls. We will follow the rhythm of the bells. We will watch the seasons change. We will see how men lived when their days were measured not in tasks completed, but in prayers said, when silence was not the absence of noise, but a discipline, when routine was not monotony, but a kind of prayer. The monks are still chanting. The chapel is dark except for that one lamp. Their voices rise and fall. The words are Latin. Most of them do not understand every word, but they know the shape of the prayers. They know when to bow, when to sit, when to stand. Outside, the sky is still black. Inside, The day has already begun. The gate closes behind you. It is heavy wood, reinforced with iron. It swings shut with a sound that echoes off the stone walls. You hear the bar drop into place. You do not turn around. You are standing in a courtyard. The ground is packed earth. There are buildings on 3 sides, stone walls, narrow windows, a well in the center. Everything is gray. The sky, the stone, the habits of the men who stand watching you. One of them steps forward. He is older. His face is lined. He does not smile. He gestures for you to follow. This is how it begins. Monasteries existed because the world needed them, not in the way it needed armies or kings, in a different way. They were places where prayer never stopped, where the hours were kept, where the dead were remembered and the living were fed. They were anchors, fixed points in a world that moved too fast and broke too often. A monastery was not built for comfort. It was built to last. Thick walls, small windows, rooms arranged around a central cloister. Everything faced inward. The chapel, the dormitory, the refectory where meals were eaten, the chapter house where the community gathered, the scriptorium where manuscripts were copied, all of it connected by covered walkways that formed a square around an open courtyard. This was the cloister, the heart of the monastery, a place of silence and stone and measured steps. Men came to this life for many reasons. Some were given as children. Oblates they were called. Boys handed over by their families, sometimes as young as 7 or 8. It was not cruelty, it was provision. A monastery could feed a child, teach him, give him a place. For families with too many sons or too little land, it was a solution. The boy would be raised by the monks. He would learn to read, to sing, to pray. And when he was old enough, he would take vows. He would have no memory of choosing this life. It would simply be the life he had. Others came as adults, some after years of other work. Farmers, craftsmen, soldiers, men who had seen enough of the world to know what it cost. They came seeking something steadier, something that would not change with the season or the Lord or the harvest. Some came because they believed, because they wanted to give their lives to prayer, because they thought this was what God required. Some came because they were tired. The monastery did not ask many questions. It asked for commitment. That was all. When a man entered, he did not enter lightly. There was a process, a testing. He would live with the community for months, sometimes a year, before he was allowed to take vows. He would follow the routine, attend the offices, work in the fields, eat in silence, sleep in the dormitory. He would learn what the life required, and then, if he stayed, he would make his promises. The vow of stability was the first. You would stay in this place. Not just in this monastery, but in this specific community. You would not wander. You would not leave when things became difficult. You would not go looking for a better situation or an easier rule. You would stay. This was not a small thing. It meant you would grow old here. You would be buried here. The men around you would become your family, not by blood, but by proximity, by shared labor, by the hours you spent standing beside them in the chapel. Stability meant you could not escape yourself. You could not move to a new place and start over. You would have to live with your own mind, your own doubts, your own failures, year after year, in the same stone rooms, with the same men. For some, this was unbearable. They left during the trial period. They walked back through the gate and returned to the world. For others, it was exactly what they needed. the vow of obedience came next. You would obey the abbot, the man chosen to lead the community. His word was final. Not because he was wiser or holier, but because someone had to decide when to plant, when to harvest, who would work in the kitchen, who would copy manuscripts, who would care for the sick. Obedience was not about submission. It was about order. A monastery could not function if every man did what he thought best. There had to be a structure, a chain of authority. The abbot decided. The monks obeyed. This did not mean the abbot was a tyrant. Most were not. They were men chosen by the community, men who understood the rule, who could balance discipline with mercy, who knew when to push and when to let go. But obedience was still obedience. You did what you were told, even when you disagreed, even when it seemed pointless, even when you were tired. The third vow was conversion of life. This was harder to define. It meant you would change. You would let the life change you. You would not cling to who you had been before. You would become a monk. This took years, decades. It was not a single moment. It was the slow wearing away of old habits, old desires, old ways of thinking. It happened through repetition, through the bells, through the silence, through the work. You would stop thinking about what you wanted. You would start thinking about what the day required. You would stop measuring time in plans and ambitions. You would start measuring it in hours of prayer. You would stop seeing yourself as separate. You would start seeing yourself as part of the community. This was conversion, not a dramatic change, a slow one. When a man took his vows, he did so in the chapel, in front of the community. He would prostrate himself on the floor, face down, arms outstretched. He would lie there while the monks chanted over him. Then he would rise. He would speak the words. He would sign a document, and it would be done. He was a monk now. The world outside continued. His family continued. His old life continued. But he was no longer part of it. He had crossed a threshold. The gate had closed behind him. What he left behind was not just a place. It was a way of being. In the world outside, you could reinvent yourself, move to a new town, take a new trade, marry, start over. Inside the monastery, you could not. You were held in place by the vow, by the walls, by the men who knew you. This was terrifying for some, liberating for others. The monastery did not promise happiness. It did not promise enlightenment. It promised structure, routine, a place to stand. And for men who had spent years being pushed by circumstance, by war, by hunger, by the demands of lords and families and survival, that was enough. You would wake at the same hour, pray the same prayers, eat the same food, do the same work. And in that repetition, you would find something. Not excitement, not comfort, but a kind of steadiness. The older monk is still walking. You follow him through the cloister. Your footsteps echo. He does not speak. He does not need to. You will learn the layout soon enough. You will learn where to stand in chapel, where to sit at meals, where to sleep, where to work. You will learn the rhythm of the bells, and you will learn that this life is not about what you want. It is about what the day requires. 1 hour at a time. One prayer at a time, one task at a time. The gate is closed. You are inside now. This is where you will stay. The bell rings 8 times a day, sometimes more, depending on the season and the feast days. But 8 is the standard. 8 calls to prayer that divide the day into pieces small enough to hold. The first is matins. It comes in the middle of the night. 2 or 3 hours after midnight, depending on the time of year. The monks rise in darkness. They file into the chapel. They chant psalms for an hour, sometimes longer. Then they return to the dormitory. Some sleep again. Others lie awake until the next bell. Lauds comes at dawn. The sky is beginning to lighten. The chapel is still cold. The monks stand in the same places they stood a few hours before. They sing the same kinds of psalms, different words, same rhythm. After lauds, there is a brief period of private prayer. Then prime. This is the first of the day hours. It is short, a few psalms, a reading, a blessing. Then the day's work begins. Terce comes mid-morning. The monks stop whatever they are doing. They return to the chapel. They pray. Then they go back to work. Sext is at midday. The sun is high. The chapel is warmer now, or at least less cold. The office is brief. Then there's a meal. None comes in the afternoon. The name means 9th hour, counting from dawn. By now the monks have been awake for many hours. Some are tired. Some are hungry again. But they stand and they pray. Vespers is at evening. The light is fading. Candles are lit. This office is longer than the day hours. More psalms, more readings. It marks the end of the working day. Compline is the last. It comes before sleep. The chapel is dark except for a few candles. The monks chant quietly. There is a blessing. Then silence. They file out without speaking. They go to the dormitory. They lie down. And, a few hours later, the bell will ring again. This is the structure of the day. Not the work, not the meals, the bells. Time in a monastery was not measured the way it is now. There were no clocks, no minutes, no precise hours. Time was measured by the sun and the seasons and the offices. You did not ask what time it was. You knew by which bell had rung last. The bells were not just reminders, they were the framework. Everything else fit around them. You worked until terce. You ate after sext. You rested after compline. The day was not a continuous flow. It was a series of segments, each one bounded by prayer. This meant you could never lose yourself completely in work. You could never forget why you were here. Every few hours the bell would ring, and you would stop, and you would return to the chapel, and you would remember. For men who had lived in the world, this took getting used to. In the world, you worked until the work was done. You ate when you were hungry. You slept when you were tired. But in the monastery, you did these things when the bell told you to. At first, this felt like an interruption. You would be in the middle of a task. Your hands would be dirty. Your mind would be focused. And the bell would ring. And you would have to stop. Walk to the chapel. Stand in your place. Sing. But over time, the interruption became the point. The work was not the point. The prayer was the point. The work was what you did between prayers. This was a hard lesson. It went against every instinct. Work felt productive. Prayer felt like stopping. But the monks learned to see it differently. Prayer was not stopping. It was the reason for everything else. The offices were not meant to be emotional experiences. They were not meant to inspire or uplift. They were meant to be done, day after day, year after year, whether you felt anything or not. Most of the time, you felt nothing. You were tired, or hungry, or your back hurt from working in the fields. You stood in the chapel and you sang the psalms and your mind wandered. You thought about the work you had left unfinished, or the meal that was coming, or nothing in particular. This was normal. The monks did not expect to feel moved every time they prayed. They expected to show up, to stand in their places, to sing the words. That was enough. The repetition was deliberate. The same psalms came around again and again. Over the course of a week, the monks would chant all 150 psalms. Then they would start over, week after week, year after year. They were not trying to understand every word. Most of the psalms were in Latin. Many of the monks did not know Latin well. They knew the shape of the prayers. They knew when to bow, when to sit, when to stand, but the meaning of individual words often escaped them. This did not matter as much as you might think. The point was not intellectual understanding. The point was participation. You were part of something larger than yourself, a rhythm that had been going on for centuries, that would continue after you were gone. The bells made this possible. They kept the rhythm. They called the community together. They marked the hours. Without them, the day would have dissolved into work and sleep and meals. With them, the day had a shape. Sleep was different in a monastery. It was not a single block of rest. It was broken. You slept after compline. You woke for matins. You slept again until lauds. This was the pattern every night. For men who were used to sleeping through the night, this was difficult. You never felt fully rested. You were always a little tired. Your body never quite adjusted. But the monks did not see this as a problem. It was part of the discipline. You did not sleep when you wanted to. You slept when you were allowed to, and you woke when the bell rang. Over time, your body learned. You would wake a few minutes before the bell. You would lie in the dark, waiting for it, and when it came, you would rise without thinking. This was what the life did. It trained you, not through force, but through repetition. The same actions at the same times, day after day, until they became automatic. You did not have to decide when to pray. The bell decided. You did not have to think about what came next. You knew. You had done it yesterday. You would do it tomorrow. This was the gift of the routine. It removed choice, and in removing choice, it removed a certain kind of burden. You did not have to figure out how to live. The rule told you how to live. The bells told you when. For some men, this was suffocating. They left. They could not bear the lack of freedom. For others, it was a relief. They had spent years making choices, trying to survive, trying to get ahead, and it had exhausted them. Here, they did not have to choose. They only had to follow. The bell rings. You stop what you are doing. You walk to the chapel. You stand in your place. You sing. This is the rhythm. This is the life. And it continues, hour after hour, day after day, without end. The silence is not absolute. There are times when the monks speak, during chapter meetings when the abbot addresses the community, in the infirmary when caring for the sick, in confession, in moments of necessity. But for most of the day they do not speak. This is not a natural state. Humans are built to communicate, to share thoughts, to fill empty space with words. The monastery asks you to resist this, to hold your tongue, to move through your day without the comfort of conversation. The rule is clear. Silence is to be kept in the cloister, in the dormitory, in the refectory during meals, in the chapel always. Speech is permitted only when necessary, and necessity is defined narrowly. You do not speak to pass the time. You do not speak to share an observation. You do not speak because you are lonely or bored, or because a thought has occurred to you that seems worth saying. You speak when the work requires it, when you need to ask a question about a task, when you need to give instruction, when you need to warn someone of danger. Even then, you keep it brief. The monks developed a system of hand signs to communicate without speaking. Simple gestures for common needs, a motion for bread, another for water, a sign for more, a sign for enough. These signs were practical. They allowed the community to function without breaking silence, but they were also limited. You could not have a conversation in hand signs. You could not express complex thoughts. You could only convey basic information. This was intentional. The silence was not meant to be circumvented. It was meant to be kept. For new monks, the silence was often the hardest part. Harder than the early rising, harder than the fasting, harder than the physical labor. You would be working beside another monk. Something would occur to you, a question, a comment, a joke, and you would open your mouth to speak, and then you would remember, and you would close it again. This happened dozens of times a day at first. The impulse to speak was constant. You had to fight it constantly. Over time, the impulse faded. Not completely, but enough. You learned to live inside your own head, to let thoughts come and go without needing to share them, to be comfortable with the absence of response. This changed you in ways that were hard to describe. You became more interior, more self-contained. You learned that most of what you wanted to say did not need to be said. The silence also changed how you listened. In the world, conversation was a back and forth. You spoke. Someone responded. You responded to their response. It was a rhythm you were used to. In the monastery, you listened differently. During the offices, you listened to the Psalms. During meals, you listened to the reading. During work, you listened to the sounds around you. The wind, the birds, the scrape of a hoe against soil. You learned to notice things you had not noticed before. Small things. The way light moved across stone. The smell of rain coming. The particular creak of a door. These things had always been there, but you had been too busy talking to notice them. The silence was not peaceful at first. It was uncomfortable. Your own thoughts were loud. Louder than they had been when you could speak them aloud and be done with them. Doubts circled. Regrets surfaced. Memories you had not thought about in years came back, and you could not talk them away. You could not distract yourself with conversation. You had to sit with them. This was part of the discipline. The silence forced you to face yourself, to see what was actually in your mind when you stopped filling it with words. For some monks, this was unbearable. Their thoughts were too dark, too chaotic, too painful. They could not stand to be alone with them. They left. For others, the silence became a kind of companion. Not a comfortable one, but a steady one. It was always there. It did not change. It did not demand anything except that you keep it. There were moments when the silence broke. A monk would laugh during a meal, or someone would speak out of turn, or a visitor would arrive and bring noise with them. These moments were jarring. The silence had become the normal state. Sound was the interruption. When the silence returned, it felt like settling, like coming back to something familiar. The monks did not talk about the silence much. There was no need. They all lived it. They all knew what it required. They all knew what it gave. What it gave was not peace exactly. It was more like clarity. When you stopped talking, you started seeing. When you stopped filling the space with your own voice, you started hearing other things. The silence taught you that you were not as important as you thought. Your thoughts were not as urgent. Your opinions were not as necessary. The world continued whether you spoke or not. This was a hard lesson, but it was also a freeing one. You did not have to perform. You did not have to be interesting. You did not have to fill the silence with something worth hearing. You could just be quiet, and in that quiet you could work. You could pray. You could exist without needing to justify your existence with words. The silence was not the absence of something. It was the presence of something else, a kind of attention, a kind of awareness, a kind of space. It took years to learn how to live in that space. Some monks never fully learned. They kept the rule. They did not speak. But inside they were still noisy, still restless, still waiting for the silence to end. Others found something in it. Not enlightenment, not revelation, just a way of being that felt more honest than the way they had been before. They learned to sit with discomfort, to let thoughts pass without grabbing onto them, to be alone without being lonely. The silence did not make them better people. It did not make them holier. It just made them quieter. And in a world that was loud and chaotic and full of demands, that was enough. The monks work 6 hours a day, sometimes more during harvest, sometimes less in winter. But 6 hours is the standard. 6 hours of physical labor between the offices. This is not optional. The rule is clear. Idleness is the enemy of the soul. A monk who does not work is a monk who has too much time to think, too much time to want, too much time to regret. Work keeps you grounded. It keeps your hands busy. It keeps your mind focused on something other than yourself. The work varies by season and by need, but it is always physical, always practical, always necessary for the community to survive. In spring, the monks plant. They work the fields that surround the monastery: barley, oats, rye, vegetables for the kitchen, herbs for the infirmary. The soil is heavy. The work is slow. You bend and plant and straighten and move forward. Row after row. Your back aches. Your hands blister. You do not stop until the bell rings. This is not farming as a profession. This is farming as prayer. You are not trying to maximize yield. You are trying to feed the community, and you are trying to do it in a way that honors the work itself. You plant carefully. You do not rush. You do not cut corners. You do what needs to be done, and you do it well. In summer, the work shifts. There is weeding, watering, tending. The days are long. The sun is hot. You work in the early morning and the late afternoon, resting during the heat of midday. The garden is not large, but it is intensive. Every plant matters. Every row is used. There is no waste. You learn to read the plants, to see when they need water, when they are struggling, when they are ready to harvest. This knowledge comes slowly. It cannot be taught. It has to be learned through attention. Harvest comes in late summer and early fall. This is the hardest work of the year. Everything must be brought in before the weather turns. The grain must be cut and threshed. The vegetables must be picked and stored. The fruit must be preserved. The monks work long hours during harvest. The offices are shorter. The meals are quicker. Everything is focused on bringing in the crop. This is when the community depends on itself most. There are no hired workers, no outside help, just the monks, working together, doing what needs to be done. Some are stronger than others, some are faster, but everyone works. The old monks do what they can. The young monks do more. No one is exempt. When the harvest is in, there is a brief moment of relief. The barns are full. The cellars are stocked. The community will eat through the winter. Then the work shifts again. In fall and winter, the monks turn to other tasks. repairing buildings, mending tools, cutting wood for the fires, brewing beer. Beer is important. Water is often unsafe to drink. Beer is safer. It is also nourishing. The monks drink it with every meal. Small beer, weak enough that it does not intoxicate, strong enough that it sustains. Brewing is a careful process. The grain must be malted. The water must be boiled. The hops must be added at the right time. The mixture must ferment in barrels, watched and tended until it is ready. The monk in charge of brewing is usually older, someone who has done it for years, someone who knows by smell and taste when the beer is right. This is skilled work, but it is still physical, lifting heavy sacks, stirring large vats, moving barrels. Your arms ache, your shoulders burn, but the work must be done. Some monks work in the scriptorium. This is different from field work. It is quieter, more precise, but it is no less demanding. Copying manuscripts is slow work. You sit at a desk with a piece of parchment in front of you. You have a quill, a pot of ink, a manuscript to copy. You work letter by letter, word by word, line by line. You cannot rush. A mistake means scraping away the ink and starting over, or worse, leaving the mistake and knowing it will be copied by someone else in the future. Your hand cramps. Your eyes strain. Your back hurts from sitting in the same position for hours, but you continue. This work is important. Books are rare, expensive, fragile. Every copy matters. The monastery's library is small, but it is carefully maintained. The books are used for the offices, for study, for teaching the young monks to read. Some of the manuscripts are religious texts, psalms, gospels, lives of saints. Others are practical, medical texts, agricultural guides, histories. The monks do not question what they copy. They simply copy it, faithfully, carefully, preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost. This is not glamorous work. It is tedious, repetitive, but it is necessary. And in doing it, the monks are part of something larger, a chain of preservation that stretches back centuries and will continue long after they are gone. All work in the monastery is understood as prayer, not because you pray while you work, but because the work itself is an offering. You are not working for yourself. You are working for the community, for the brothers who will eat the food you grow, who will drink the beer you brew, who will read the books you copy. You are also working for God, not in a mystical sense, in a practical one. You are using your hands to do what needs to be done. You are being faithful in small things. This changes how you work. You do not cut corners. You do not do the minimum. You do what is needed, and you do it as well as you can. Not because anyone is watching. Not because you will be rewarded, but because this is what the work deserves. The monks do not talk much about their work. They simply do it. Day after day, season after season, year after year. And in doing it, they learn things that cannot be learned any other way. Patience, attention, humility. You learn that you are not as strong as you thought, that your body has limits, that some tasks take longer than you expected. You learn to work with others, to match your pace to theirs, to help when help is needed, to accept help when you need it. You learn that work is not about achievement. It is about participation. You are part of a community that works together to survive. Your contribution matters, but it is not about you. The bell rings. You stop working. You wash your hands. You walk to the chapel. You pray. Then you return to the work, and you continue. This is the rhythm. Work and prayer. Prayer and work. neither one more important than the other. Both necessary, both part of the same life. The monks eat twice a day, once after sext in the middle of the day, once after vespers in the evening. In winter, when the days are short and the work is lighter, there is sometimes only one meal. This is not starvation, but it is not abundance either. It is enough, barely enough on some days, more than enough on feast days. But mostly it is just enough. The meals are simple: bread, porridge, vegetables, beans, cheese when available, fish on certain days, eggs occasionally, beer with every meal. There is no meat. The rule forbids it except for the sick. This is not about health, it is about discipline. Meat is rich. Meat is indulgent. Meat is what people in the world eat when they want to enjoy themselves. The monks are not here to enjoy themselves. The refectory is a long room with tables arranged in rows. The monks sit on benches. The abbot sits at a separate table at the front. There is a lectern in the corner where one monk stands and reads aloud during the meal. You do not choose where to sit. You sit in your assigned place. You do not choose what to eat. You eat what is served. You do not choose how much. You take your portion and you eat it. The meal begins with a prayer. Then the reader begins. He reads from Scripture, or from the lives of saints, or from the rule itself. His voice fills the room. The monks eat in silence, listening. You do not taste the food carefully. You do not savor it. You eat because your body needs fuel. You eat because the meal is part of the day's structure. You eat, and then you return to work. The food is not bad. It is not good. It is plain. Bread that is dense and dark. Porridge that is thick and bland. Vegetables that are boiled until soft. Everything is cooked simply. Salt, sometimes herbs, nothing more. On feast days there is more. An extra dish. Perhaps fish. Perhaps a sweet made with honey. Perhaps better bread. The portions are larger. The beer is stronger. These days stand out. Not because the food is remarkable, but because it is different. And difference in a life of sameness is significant. But feast days are rare. Most days are ordinary. Most meals are plain. Fasting is part of the rhythm. Not just the daily rhythm of 2 meals instead of 3, but the seasonal rhythm of Lent and Advent and other penitential periods. During these times, the meals are smaller. The portions are reduced. Certain foods are forbidden. The monks eat less. They feel it. Hunger is not constant, but it is present. A low background awareness that your body wants more than it is getting. You learn to live with it, to work through it, to pray through it. This is intentional. Hunger reminds you that you are a body, that you have needs, that you are not self-sufficient. It keeps you humble. It also keeps you focused. When you are slightly hungry all the time, you do not have the energy for distraction. You do what needs to be done. You do not waste time. The monks do not talk about food. They do not complain about being hungry. They do not discuss what they wish they could eat. This would be pointless. The meals are what they are. Talking about it would not change anything. But they think about food, especially during fasts, especially in winter when the stores are running low and the meals are thinner. You think about bread, about the smell of it baking, about the way it tastes when it is fresh and warm. You think about cheese, about eggs, about things you have not eaten in months. These thoughts come and go. You do not dwell on them. You notice them. You let them pass. You return your attention to the work, to the prayer, to the present moment. The body is a problem in monastic life. not because it is evil, but because it is demanding. It wants food, it wants warmth, it wants comfort, it wants rest. The monastery teaches you to say no to these wants. Not always, not completely, but often enough that you learn the difference between need and want. You need food, but you do not need as much as you want. You need sleep, but you do not need as much as you want. You need warmth, but you do not need to be comfortable. This is a hard lesson. Your body protests. It is cold in the dormitory. Your stomach is empty. Your muscles ache from work. Your body wants relief, but relief is not always available. And learning to function without it is part of the training. The monks are not trying to punish their bodies. They are trying to master them, to make the body serve the life rather than the life serve the body. This does not always work. Some monks struggle with their appetites more than others. Some are always hungry. Some are always tired. Some are always cold. But they continue. They eat the plain food. They fast when required. They work when their bodies want to rest. They rise when their bodies want to sleep. And over time, the body adapts. Not completely, but enough. You learn to function on less, to work through discomfort, to ignore the constant low-level complaints of a body that wants more than it is getting. This changes your relationship with physical pleasure. In the world, pleasure is pursued. You eat what tastes good. You rest when you are tired. You seek comfort. In the monastery, pleasure is incidental. Sometimes the food tastes good. Sometimes you feel rested. Sometimes you are warm. But these are not the goals. They are side effects. The goal is to do what the day requires, to follow the rule, to keep the rhythm, whether your body is comfortable or not. This sounds harsh, and in some ways it is, but it is also freeing. You are not constantly chasing satisfaction. You are not constantly disappointed when you do not get it. You eat, you work, you pray, you sleep, and that is enough. The monks do not become ascetics. They do not starve themselves. They do not seek suffering for its own sake. They simply accept the limitations of the life they have chosen. 2 meals a day, plain food, seasonal fasting, hunger that comes and goes, a body that is fed enough to work but not enough to be satisfied. This is the discipline. Not dramatic, not extreme, just steady, day after day, year after year. And in that steadiness, you learn something. You learn that you can live on less than you thought, that your body is stronger than you knew, that satisfaction is not the same as happiness. You learn that the body is not the enemy, but it is not the master either. It is a tool, a vehicle, something to be cared for and used and not indulged. The bell rings, the meal is over. The reader closes his book. The monks stand. They file out of the refectory in silence. Their stomachs are not full, but they are not empty either. They have eaten enough, and now there is work to do. Winter is the hardest season. The cold comes early and stays late. The stone walls hold it. The narrow windows let in drafts. The fires in the warming room are small and carefully rationed. Wood must last until spring. You wake in darkness and the air is sharp. Your breath clouds. The floor is ice against your feet. You pull on your habit and it is stiff with cold. You walk to the chapel and your fingers are numb. The chapel is no warmer. You stand in your place and you chant, and your voice comes out in white puffs. The psalms are the same as always, but in winter they feel longer. Your body wants to move, to generate heat. But you stand still. After the office there is work, but not the work of other seasons. The fields are frozen. The garden is bare. The work of winter is maintenance, repair, preparation. You mend tools in the workshop. Your hands are clumsy with cold. You split wood for the fires. The axe is heavy. Your muscles are stiff. You work until you are warm, and then you work longer. The days are short. The sun rises late and sets early. There are more hours of darkness than light. The offices come closer together. Matins and lauds feel like they are only moments apart. The meals are thinner in winter. The stores from harvest are carefully managed. Portions are smaller. The variety is less. Porridge, bread, dried beans, preserved vegetables, the same things day after day. You are hungry more often. You are cold more often. You are tired more often. This is simply how winter is. But there is also a stillness to winter. The work is slower. There is less urgency. The fields do not demand attention. The harvest is not pressing. You have time to think, time to pray, time to sit with the silence. Some monks prefer winter for this reason. The rhythm is clearer. The distractions are fewer. There is nothing to do but keep the offices and do the small tasks that keep the community functioning. Others struggle. The darkness weighs on them. The ice or cold seeps into their bones. They count the days until spring. Spring comes slowly. The first signs are small. The light lasts a few minutes longer each day. The ice on the water barrel is thinner in the morning. The wind is less bitter. Then the ground begins to thaw. The mud is thick and heavy. It clings to your boots. It makes every step an effort. But it means the earth is waking. The work changes. You are back in the fields, turning soil, preparing beds, planting seeds. Your back aches from bending. Your hands are raw from the cold, wet earth. But this is good work, necessary work. The days grow longer. The sun is warmer. You work in the early morning and the late afternoon. The middle of the day is for the offices and the meal and rest. Spring is a season of hope. Not dramatic hope, quiet hope. The hope that the seeds will sprout, that the weather will hold, that the harvest will come. You do not talk about this hope. You simply plant, row after row, trusting that what you put in the ground will grow. Summer is the season of labor. The days are long. The work is constant. The garden needs tending, weeding, watering, watching for pests. The heat is different from the cold. It is oppressive in its own way. You sweat through your habit. You drink more water. You move slower in the middle of the day. But summer is also abundant. The garden produces. There are fresh vegetables, herbs, fruit from the orchard. The meals are better, more varied. Your body feels stronger. The offices are shorter in summer. There's too much work to spend long hours in the chapel. You pray. You return to the fields. You work until the light fades. This is the rhythm of summer. Work and prayer and work again. Your body is tired at the end of each day, but it is a good tired. The tired of muscles used, of tasks completed. Harvest comes in late summer. This is when everything depends on the weather, on timing, on the community working together. The grain must be cut at the right moment. Too early and it is not ready. Too late and it spoils. You watch the fields, you wait, and then the abbot gives the word and everyone moves. The work is hard. Cutting, binding, carrying, threshing. Your hands blister. Your back screams. You work from dawn until dark. You eat quickly. You sleep heavily. But when the harvest is in, there is relief. The barns are full. The community will eat through the winter. You have done what needed to be done. Fall is a season of preparation. The days are getting shorter again. The air is getting colder. You know what is coming. You gather the last of the garden. You preserve what can be preserved. You repair what needs repairing before winter makes it impossible. You cut wood. You check the roofs. You make sure everything is ready. The offices are longer again. The work is less urgent. You have time to return to the slower rhythm, to the longer prayers, to the silence. Fall is also a season of reflection. The year is almost complete. You have moved through the cycle, planting, growing, harvesting, preparing, and soon you will begin again. The monastic year is not just about seasons. It is also about feast days, days that break the ordinary rhythm, days when the offices are longer, the meals are better, the work is lighter. Christmas is the greatest feast. The offices are elaborate. There are special readings, special chants. The chapel is decorated with evergreen branches. There are candles everywhere. The meal is abundant. There is meat for once. There is wine instead of beer. There are sweets. The portions are generous. This is a day of celebration. Not loud celebration, not chaotic celebration, but real joy. The monks smile. They relax slightly. They allow themselves to enjoy the feast. Easter is the other great feast. It comes in spring, after the long fast of Lent, after weeks of smaller meals and stricter discipline. The Easter vigil is long. It begins in darkness and ends in light. The monks process with candles. They sing the ancient hymns. They celebrate the resurrection. And then there is the feast. After weeks of hunger, the food tastes better than it ever has. Your body is grateful. Your spirit is lifted. But these feast days are rare. Most days are ordinary. Most days follow the standard rhythm. 2 meals, 6 hours of work, 8 offices, sleep interrupted by matins. This is the point. The feast days matter because they are different. They stand out against the background of ordinary days. They give you something to look forward to, something to mark the passage of time. But the ordinary days are the foundation. They are where the life is actually lived, where the discipline is practiced, where the routine becomes prayer. The year turns, winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter again. The cycle repeats. The work changes. The weather changes. But the rhythm remains. You plant in spring. You tend in summer. You harvest in fall. You repair in winter. And then you plant again. You are cold in winter. You are hot in summer. You are tired in harvest. You are hungry in Lent. And then the seasons turn, and you experience it all again. This is not monotony. This is rhythm. This is the shape of a life lived in attention to the natural world, to the cycle of growth and rest, to the pattern that has repeated since the beginning. The monks do not fight the seasons. They do not wish for summer in winter or winter in summer. They accept what is. They do the work that the season requires. They trust that the cycle will continue. And it does. Year after year, generation after generation, the same fields are planted. The same harvest is brought in. The same preparations are made for winter. Individual monks come and go. But the rhythm continues. The year turns. The seasons change. The work goes on. This is what the monastic year teaches. That you are part of something larger than yourself. That the work you do matters not because it is unique, but because it is necessary. That the rhythm will continue long after you are gone. The bell rings. Another office, another season, another year. You stand. You walk to the chapel. You take your place. and you pray. Prayer is not what you think it is. It is not ecstasy. It is not visions. It is not feeling close to God or feeling anything at all. Prayer is standing in the chapel 8 times a day and saying the words whether you feel them or not. Most of the time, you feel nothing. You are tired. Your mind wanders. You think about the work you left unfinished, about the meal that is coming, about the ache in your lower back, about nothing in particular. The Psalms continue. Your mouth forms the words. Your voice joins the others. But your attention is elsewhere. This is normal. This is most days. The monks do not expect prayer to be an experience. They expect it to be a practice. Something you do, not something that happens to you. You show up. You stand in your place. You say the words. That is prayer. Faith in a monastery is not about feeling. It is about obedience. You do what the rule requires. You attend the offices. You keep the silence. You do the work. You trust that this matters, even when it does not feel like it matters. This is harder than it sounds. In the world, faith is often tied to emotion, to moments of conviction, to feeling certain, to experiencing something that confirms what you believe. In the monastery, those moments are rare. Most days are ordinary. Most prayers feel empty. Most of the time, you are simply going through the motions, and you have to be okay with that. You have to trust that the motions themselves are enough, that showing up is enough, that faithfulness is not about feeling faithful, but about continuing to do what you committed to do. Doubt is common, more common than anyone talks about. You doubt whether this life makes sense, whether the prayers matter, whether God is listening, whether you made the right choice when you entered the gate. These doubts do not come as dramatic crises. They come as quiet questions that surface during the long hours of silence, during the cold mornings, during the repetitive work. What am I doing here? Does any of this matter? What if I am wasting my life? The monks do not have good answers to these questions. They simply continue. They attend the next office. They do the next task. They trust that the doubt will pass or that they will learn to live with it. Some doubts do pass, others do not. You learn to pray with doubt, to work with doubt, to live with uncertainty about whether what you are doing has any meaning beyond itself. This is part of the discipline, not resolving the doubt, just continuing anyway. Obedience is the structure that holds you when faith feels weak. You do not obey because you understand. You obey because you promised to obey. The abbot tells you to work in the kitchen. You work in the kitchen, even if you think you would be more useful in the fields, even if you do not like kitchen work, even if it seems like a waste of your abilities. You obey because obedience is the vow you took, not obedience when it makes sense. Obedience as a practice. This grates against everything in you that wants autonomy, that wants to make your own decisions, that wants to be recognized for your particular gifts. But the monastery is not interested in your particular gifts. It is interested in whether you can do what is asked of you, whether you can set aside your preferences, whether you can function as part of a community rather than as an individual. This is humbling. Constantly humbling. You are not special here. You are not recognized for being clever or talented or insightful. You are simply one monk among many, doing the work that needs to be done. Some monks struggle with this more than others. Men who were important in the world. Men who were used to being listened to. Men who had authority. Here they have none. They are novices again. They must learn to take direction, to accept correction, to be ordinary. This breaks some men. They cannot bear it. They leave. Others find relief in it. They are tired of being important, tired of having to prove themselves, tired of the weight of their own significance. Here they can be no one, and there is a freedom in that. The inner life of a monk is not peaceful. It is not serene. It is a constant struggle between what you want and what the life requires. You want to sleep. The bell rings. You want to speak. The rule says silence. You want recognition. The community offers none. Every day is a series of small surrenders, small deaths of the self, small acceptances of limitation. This does not get easier over time. It gets more familiar. You know the pattern. You know what will be required. But it still costs something every time. The monks do not talk about their inner struggles. This would violate the silence. It would also be pointless. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is tired. Everyone has doubts. Talking about it would not change anything. It would only make the struggle more present, more real, more difficult to bear. So you keep it to yourself. You carry your doubts quietly. You do the work. You attend the offices. You continue. There are moments of clarity, brief moments when the prayer feels real, when the work feels meaningful, when you understand why you are here. These moments are gifts. You do not earn them. You do not manufacture them. They come when they come, and then they pass. You learn not to chase them, not to expect them, not to measure your faith by whether you are having them. You learn that faith is not about moments. It is about years, decades, a lifetime of showing up, of doing what is required, of trusting that it matters even when you cannot see how. The monastery does not produce saints. It produces men who have learned to keep going, who have learned to live with uncertainty, who have learned that faithfulness is not about feeling faithful, but about being faithful. This is not inspiring. It is not dramatic. It is simply true. You pray because it is time to pray. You work because it is time to work. You obey because you promised to obey. You stay because you vowed to stay. And in doing these things, day after day, year after year, something happens. Not a transformation, not enlightenment. Just a slow wearing away of the parts of you that need certainty, that need recognition, that need to feel like what you are doing matters. You become smaller, quieter, more willing to simply be part of the rhythm. This is not holiness. This is just what happens when you stop fighting, when you accept that this is your life, that this is what you chose, that this is enough. The bell rings. You stand. You walk to the chapel. You take your place. You do not feel anything. You do not expect to feel anything. You simply pray. The infirmary is a small room near the cloister. It has 3 beds, a table for preparing medicines, a shelf with jars of herbs, a window that lets in light. It smells of dried plants and sickness, and the particular staleness of a room where people lie still for too long. When a monk falls ill, he is brought here. He is excused from the offices, from the work, from the silence. He is allowed to rest, to speak when necessary, to receive care. This is not a hospital. There are no doctors, no surgeries, no cures for most ailments. There is only rest and simple remedies, and the hope that the body will heal itself. The infirmarian is usually an older monk, someone who has learned over years which herbs help with fever, which poultices draw out infection, which teas ease pain. This knowledge is practical, passed down, trial and error over generations. He makes his rounds quietly. He checks the sick monks. He brings water. He changes soiled linens. He prepares simple meals for those who can eat. Broth, soft bread, weak beer. He does not have much to offer beyond presence, beyond care, beyond the willingness to sit with suffering. Most illnesses pass. A fever breaks after 3 days. A cough fades. A stomach ailment runs its course. The monk recovers. He returns to the dormitory, to the offices, to the work. He is weaker for a while, but he continues. Some illnesses do not pass. A monk develops a cough that does not stop. It deepens. It rattles in his chest. He grows thin. He cannot work. He can barely walk to the infirmary. He lies in bed and coughs and struggles to breathe. The infirmarian does what he can. Honey for the throat, steam to ease the lungs. But the cough continues. The monk grows weaker. The community prays for him. They mention him by name in the offices. They ask for healing. But they also prepare for the possibility that healing will not come. Death is not hidden in a monastery. It is not sanitized. It is not kept at a distance. It happens in the infirmary, in full view of the community. And when it comes, the monks are there. When a monk is dying, the others take turns sitting with him. They do not leave him alone. Someone is always present, praying quietly, holding his hand, offering water if he can drink. This is not dramatic. It is simply what is done. You do not abandon a brother at the end. You stay. The dying monk may be conscious. He may speak. He may ask for forgiveness. He may give final instructions. Or he may be too weak, too far gone. He may simply lie there, breathing in shallow gasps while the others pray. When the end comes, it is often quiet. The breathing stops. The body goes still. There is a moment of silence. Then the infirmarian closes the eyes, folds the hands, covers the body with a clean cloth. The bell rings. Not the usual bell, a different one. Slower, heavier. The death knell. The monks stop what they are doing. They gather in the chapel. They pray for the dead brother. They commend his soul to God. They ask for mercy. Then they prepare the body. This is done by the infirmarian and a few others. They wash the body. They dress it in a clean habit. They lay it on a bier in the chapel. Candles are lit at the head and feet. The body lies in state for a day. The monks file past. They pray. They remember. They say goodbye in their own silent ways. Some knew the dead monk well. They worked beside him for years. They stood next to him in chapel. They shared meals in silence. His absence will be felt. Others barely knew him. He was just another monk, another face in the rows. But he was still a brother, still part of the community. His death still matters. The burial happens quickly, usually within a day or two. There is no embalming, no preservation. The body is placed in a simple wooden coffin. No ornament, no decoration, just plain wood. The monks carry the coffin to the cemetery. It is a small plot near the monastery. Rows of simple graves. Some marked with wooden crosses, some with stones, most with nothing but a mound of earth. A grave has been dug. The coffin is lowered. The abbot says prayers. The monks chant psalms. Then the earth is filled in. There is no eulogy, no long remembrance. The dead monk's life is not summarized or celebrated. He lived, he served, he died. That is enough. The community returns to the monastery. The offices continue. The work continues. The rhythm does not stop for death. But something has shifted. There is an empty place in the chapel, an empty bed in the dormitory, an empty seat at the table. For a while you notice it. You expect to see him. You turn to where he used to stand. and he is not there. Then, slowly, you stop noticing. The empty place becomes normal. Someone else takes his spot in chapel. His bed is given to a new monk. His tasks are redistributed. The community continues. It has to. There is work to do, prayers to say, a rhythm to maintain. This is how death is handled in a monastery. Not with drama, not with extended mourning, but with acknowledgement, with prayer, with the simple acts of washing and burying and continuing. Aging happens slowly. You do not notice it day by day, but over years you see it, in yourself, in others. Your back hurts more. Your knees ache. You cannot work as long as you used to. You tire more easily. You need more rest. The community makes allowances. Older monks are given lighter tasks. They are excused from the hardest labor. They are allowed to sit during offices when standing becomes too difficult. But they are not excused from the life. They still attend the offices. They still keep the silence. They still participate in the community. They simply do it more slowly. Some monks age well. They remain sharp, active, engaged. They work until they cannot work anymore. They pray until they cannot pray anymore. Others decline more quickly. Their minds fade. They forget things. They repeat themselves. They become confused. The community cares for them. Younger monks help them dress, guide them to chapel, make sure they eat. This is done without complaint, without resentment. It is simply what is needed. You will be old someday. You will need help, and someone will help you. This is the unspoken contract of the community. Old age in a monastery is not comfortable. There is no special treatment, no soft beds, no extra warmth. You age in the same cold dormitory. You eat the same plain food. You follow the same rhythm. But you are not alone. You are not abandoned. You are cared for by men who have lived beside you for decades, who know you, who will do for you what you once did for others. Death comes for everyone eventually. Some monks die young. Accidents, sudden illness, most die old, after years of the life, after decades of the rhythm. When an old monk dies, it feels different than when a young one dies. There is less shock, less sense of tragedy. He lived a full life. He kept his vows. He finished the race. His death is still mourned, still marked, still prayed for. But there is also a sense of completion. He did what he came to do. The cemetery fills slowly, year by year, generation by generation. The monks who were buried there lived the same life, followed the same rule, kept the same rhythm. Their individual stories are mostly forgotten. Their names fade. The wooden crosses rot. The stones sink into the earth. But the community continues. New monks enter. They take the vows. They learn the rhythm. They work and pray and age and die. And they are buried in the same cemetery. This is the continuity, not in individuals, but in the life itself. The rhythm that continues regardless of who is keeping it. You are part of something that was here before you, that will be here after you. Your contribution is not unique. It is simply your turn. You will die here. You will be buried here, and the bells will keep ringing. The offices will continue. The work will go on. This is not depressing. It is simply true, and there is a strange comfort in it. You do not have to be exceptional. You do not have to leave a legacy. You simply have to be faithful, to show up, to do your part. And when you are gone, others will do theirs. The bell rings. Another office, another day, another year. The monks gather. Some are young, some are old. Some will be here for decades. Some will die soon. But for now, they are all here. standing in their places, saying the words, and that is enough. The monastery is not sealed off completely. There is a gate. It opens. People come. They bring news. They bring requests. They bring the world with them, briefly, before the gate closes again. But contact is controlled, measured. The monks do not go out into the world. The world comes to them in small doses on specific terms. Guests arrive occasionally. Travelers, pilgrims, people seeking shelter for a night. The monastery has a guest house for this purpose, a separate building near the gate. Beds, a fire, simple meals. The guest master is responsible for them. He greets them. He shows them where to sleep. He brings them food. He answers their questions. He does this with courtesy, but without warmth. He is polite. He is helpful. But he does not engage beyond what is necessary. The guests are not allowed into the cloister. They do not attend the offices with the monks. They do not eat in the refectory. They are kept separate, close enough to receive hospitality, far enough to preserve the monastery's rhythm. Some guests are quiet. They are grateful for shelter. They eat. They sleep. They leave in the morning. They barely disturb the silence. Others are not. They want to talk. They have stories. They have questions about the monastic life. They are curious or lonely or simply unused to silence. The guest master listens. He responds briefly, but he does not encourage conversation. He has other duties. The guests are cared for, but they are not the center of attention. Pilgrims come seeking prayers. They have sick relatives, failed harvests, troubled consciences. They ask the monks to pray for them, to intercede, to add their petitions to the daily offices. The monks agree. They do not ask for payment, though sometimes payment is offered. Coins, food, cloth. These gifts are accepted. They help sustain the community, but they are not required. The pilgrims leave their requests with the guest master. He brings them to the abbot. The abbot mentions them during chapter meetings. The community prays, not with great emotion, not with certainty that their prayers will be answered, but they pray. This is part of the monastery's purpose, to pray for those who cannot pray for themselves, to hold the needs of the world before God, to be a place where prayer continues even when the world is too busy or too broken to pray. The monks do not know if their prayers help. They do not see the outcomes. The pilgrims do not return to report whether the sick recovered or the harvests improved. The monks simply pray and trust that it matters. Letters arrive occasionally, brought by messengers, from other monasteries, from bishops, from nobles who are patrons of the community, sometimes from families of monks who entered years ago. The abbot reads these letters. He decides what needs to be shared with the community. Most letters are practical, requests for prayers, news of deaths, questions about land or resources. Some letters are personal, a mother writing to her son who became a monk 20 years ago, a brother asking for news. These letters are given to the monk they concern. He reads them alone. He does not share their contents unless he chooses to. The letters are a reminder that the world continues, that the people you left behind are still living, still aging, still dying, still remembering you. For some monks, this is painful. The letters stir up old attachments, old regrets. They remind you of what you gave up, of who you were before. For others, the letters are a comfort, a thin thread connecting you to a past that feels increasingly distant, proof that you have not been completely forgotten. But the letters are rare. Months can pass without one. Years for some monks. The silence from the outside world becomes normal. You stop expecting news. You stop wondering what is happening beyond the walls. The monastery sends letters too, to other monasteries, to church authorities, to patrons. These letters are formal, brief. They report deaths, request resources, maintain connections that are necessary for the community's survival. The monks do not write personal letters. They do not maintain correspondence with family or friends. This would violate the spirit of the vow. You have left that world. You do not reach back into it. There are exceptions. A monk's parent is dying. The abbot allows a letter, a few lines, an acknowledgement, a blessing, but nothing more. The monastery also has obligations to the outside world. It owns land, farms worked by lay brothers or hired laborers. These farms produce food for the community. They also produce surplus that can be sold or traded. The cellarer manages these relationships. He deals with the workers. He negotiates prices. He ensures the monastery has what it needs. This requires contact with merchants, with officials, with the practical realities of survival. But this contact is limited. The cellarer goes out when necessary. He returns. He does not bring the world back with him. He does not share gossip or news unless it directly affects the community. The monastery is aware of the world. Wars happen, plagues spread. Kings rise and fall. But this awareness is distant, filtered. The monks hear about these things secondhand, through guests, through letters, through the cellarer's reports. They do not experience them directly. They are insulated, protected by the walls, by the rule, by the deliberate separation from the chaos outside. This separation is not absolute. The monastery depends on the world for some things, for iron to make tools, for salt to preserve food, for candles, for parchment. These things must be purchased or traded for, but the dependence is minimal. The monastery produces most of what it needs. It is as self-sufficient as possible. This is intentional. The less you need from the world, the less the world can disrupt you. Some monks struggle with the isolation. They miss conversation. They miss variety. They miss knowing what is happening. They feel cut off, forgotten. Others find relief in it. The world was too much, too loud, too demanding. Here, they do not have to keep up. They do not have to know. They can focus on the small circle of their daily life. The isolation also protects the rhythm. If the monks were constantly engaged with the outside world, the offices would be interrupted. The silence would be broken. The work would be disrupted. The walls are not just physical. They are psychological. They create a boundary. Inside, there is order. Outside, there is chaos. The monks have chosen the inside. They have chosen the order. But the boundary is permeable. The world seeps in, through guests, through letters, through the news that cannot be completely kept out. A plague is spreading. The monks hear about it. They pray. They take precautions. They limit contact with outsiders, but they cannot seal themselves off completely. A war is being fought nearby. Soldiers pass through the area. The monastery closes its gates. It waits. It hopes the violence will pass by. A famine strikes the region. People come to the monastery begging for food. The monks share what they can, but their stores are limited. They cannot feed everyone. These moments remind the monks that they are not separate from the world. They are part of it. They are affected by it. They cannot escape it completely, but they can limit its influence. They can maintain the rhythm despite the disruptions. They can return to the offices, to the silence, to the work. The gate opens, the gate closes, the world comes in, the world goes out, and inside, the bells keep ringing. The monastery has stood for 200 years. The stones are worn smooth in places, from feet walking the same paths, from hands touching the same walls, from centuries of use. The men who built it are long dead. The men who live here now will also die. But the monastery will remain. The rhythm will continue. This is not an accident. This is the design. Monastic life endured because it was built to endure. Not on the strength of individuals, not on charisma or inspiration or moments of religious fervor, but on structure, on routine, on the simple fact that the same things were done the same way every day. The world outside changed constantly. Kingdoms rose and fell. Borders shifted. Languages evolved. Technologies improved. But inside the monastery, the offices were chanted at the same hours. The fields were planted in the same season. The silence was kept in the same way. This consistency was valuable, not just to the monks, to everyone. In times of war, the monastery remained. Armies passed by. Villages were burned. People fled. But the monastery stood. Its walls were thick. Its stores were hidden. Its community was organized. Soldiers sometimes came. They demanded food. They took what they wanted. But they rarely destroyed the monastery itself. It was useful, a place to rest, a place to get supplies, a place that would still be there when the war was over. And when the war ended, the monastery was still there, still functioning, still keeping the hours, still providing a fixed point in a world that had been turned upside down. In times of plague, the monastery was a refuge, not always a safe one. Disease came inside the walls too. Monks died. But the community had structure. It had discipline. It had ways of caring for the sick, ways of burying the dead, ways of continuing. People outside had none of this. They panicked. They fled. They abandoned the sick. They forgot the dead. The social order collapsed. But the monastery maintained order. It kept the rhythm. It did what needed to be done. And when the plague passed, the monastery was still there. In times of famine, the monastery shared what it had. Not generously. It could not afford to be generous, but it shared. A little bread, a little beer, enough to keep some people alive. The monastery's fields were better managed than most. The monks knew how to rotate crops, how to preserve food, how to stretch supplies through a long winter. This knowledge kept them alive, and it kept others alive too. The monastery was also a repository of knowledge, not vast knowledge, not libraries full of rare texts, but practical knowledge. How to read, how to write, how to calculate, how to keep records. The monks copied manuscripts. Not because they were scholars, not because they loved learning, but because books were needed. For the offices, for teaching, for preserving information that would otherwise be lost. Most of what they copied was religious. Psalms, Gospels, commentaries, lives of saints. But some of it was practical. Medical texts, agricultural guides, histories, legal documents. These texts survived because the monks copied them, carefully, repeatedly, generation after generation. When a manuscript wore out, it was copied again. When a monastery was destroyed, other monasteries had copies. This was not dramatic work. It was tedious, slow, but it was essential. Without it, much of what was known would have been forgotten. The monks did not think of themselves as preserving civilization. They were simply doing their work, copying what needed to be copied, keeping the books that were needed for the life. but the effect was the same. Knowledge was preserved, passed down, available when it was needed again. The monastery also provided stability in a more personal way. For men who entered, it offered a life that would not change, that would not be disrupted by circumstances beyond their control. In the world, your life could be upended at any moment. Your lord could die, and a new one could take his place. Your land could be taken. Your family could be scattered. You could be conscripted into an army. You could lose everything. In the monastery, you were protected from most of this. You had given up ownership. You had no family to lose. You had no lord except the abbot. You were part of a community that would care for you until you died. This was not freedom, but it was security. And for many men, security was more valuable than freedom. The monastery also offered meaning, not dramatic meaning, not the sense that you were doing something important or world-changing, but the meaning that comes from being part of something larger than yourself. You were keeping the hours. You were maintaining the rhythm. You were part of a chain that stretched back centuries and would continue for centuries more. Your individual contribution was small, but it was real. You mattered because you were here, because you showed up, because you did your part. This was enough for many men. They did not need to be heroes. They did not need to be remembered. They just needed to know that what they were doing had a purpose. The silence endured because it worked. Not because it was pleasant, not because it made people happy, but because it created a space where the life could be lived. Without silence, the monastery would have been like any other community, full of conversation, full of distraction, full of the constant noise of people trying to be heard. With silence, the monastery was different. It was a place where you could hear yourself think, where you could notice things, where you could pay attention. The silence was hard. It was uncomfortable. It went against human nature, but it served a purpose. It kept the focus on the rhythm, on the work, on the prayer. And because it served a purpose, it endured. Generation after generation of monks kept the silence, not because they wanted to, but because it was part of the rule, part of the life. The monastery endured because it did not depend on exceptional people. It did not need saints. It did not need visionaries. It just needed ordinary men who were willing to follow the rule. This was its strength. It could survive mediocrity. It could survive failure. It could survive the fact that most monks were not particularly holy or wise or dedicated, as long as they showed up, as long as they followed the routine, as long as they did the work. The monastery continued. Individual monks came and went. Some were faithful, some were not. Some thrived, some struggled. Some died young. Some lived long lives. But the monastery was not about individuals. It was about the community, about the rhythm, about the structure that held everyone together. This is why it lasted. Not because it was perfect, not because it produced perfect people, but because it was built to last. Built on repetition, built on routine, built on the simple fact that the same things would be done tomorrow that were done today. The world needed this. It needed places that did not change, places that kept the hours, places that remembered, places that endured. The monastery was one of those places. The bell rings. The monks gather. They have gathered here for 200 years. They will gather here for 200 more. The faces change. The names change. But the rhythm remains. This is why monastic life endured. Not because it was easy, not because it was inspiring, but because it was steady. And in an unsteady world, that was enough. The day is ending. Compline has been sung. The last office. The monks have filed out of the chapel in silence. They have walked through the darkened cloister to the dormitory. They have removed their shoes. They have lain down on their narrow beds. The monastery is quiet now, not the silence of discipline, the silence of sleep, of rest, of the day finally releasing its hold. Outside, the sky is black. There are stars. There is a moon, perhaps. Or perhaps it is cloudy. It does not matter much. Inside these walls, the darkness is the same. Tomorrow the bell will ring again. Matins will come in the middle of the night. The monks will rise. They will walk to the chapel. They will chant the psalms. And the day will begin again. This has been a year inside these walls. Not a remarkable year. Not a year of great events or dramatic changes. Just a year. 12 months of bells and bread and silence and work. The seasons turned. Winter gave way to spring. Spring to summer. Summer to fall. Fall to winter again. The fields were planted and tended and harvested. The offices were kept. The silence was maintained. Some monks struggled. Some found peace. Most simply continued, day after day, doing what was required, following the rhythm. This is what monastic life was. Not a escape from the world, not a pursuit of holiness, just a way of living, a structure, a routine, a rhythm that held men together and gave their days a shape. The monks who lived this life were not special. They were ordinary men who had chosen an ordinary life. Or perhaps the life had chosen them. It was hard to say after enough years had passed. They woke when the bell rang. They prayed when it was time to pray. They worked when it was time to work. They ate when it was time to eat. They slept when it was time to sleep. And in doing these simple things, over and over, year after year, they became part of something that lasted, something that continued, something that endured. The monastery will still be here tomorrow. The bells will still ring. The offices will still be kept. The work will still be done. The men will change. Some will die. Some will enter. But the rhythm will remain. This is what the year has shown, that life can be lived simply, that routine is not emptiness, that silence is not absence, that showing up is enough. The monks are sleeping now. Their breathing is slow and steady. Some snore softly. Some lie awake, waiting for the bell. Some dream of things they do not remember when they wake. The stone walls hold the cold. The narrow windows let in no light. The dormitory is dark and still. In a few hours the bell will ring, and it will all begin again. But for now there is only this: the quiet, the darkness, the slow rhythm of breathing, the sense of a day completed, of work done, of prayers said. The monastery rests, not forever, just until the bell rings, and then the rhythm continues.